Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. We're going to be doing a really deep dive into a very specific, honestly, incredibly dense snapshot in time. We're looking at the front page global news landscape of June 4th, 2026, straight from Al Jazeera. You know, when you look at the headlines from this single day, you don't just see isolated events. You're looking at a world that is grappling with immense geopolitical friction, intense local unrest, and some really profound human stories of survival and loss. So my goal for us today is to break down this giant complex web of headlines and make it completely accessible. Let's map out exactly what was happening on the ground, in the diplomatic corridors, and across the globe on this exact date. Here is our roadmap for today. First up, the Lebanon ceasefire rejection. Second, questions from the front lines. Third, global political tensions. And finally, number 4, tragedies and triumphs. All right, let's get right into it. Section 1, the Lebanon ceasefire rejection, a diplomatic breakdown in the Middle East. So there is a totally stark disconnect happening right here. On one hand, we've got this major diplomatic push, right? A U.S. brokered ceasefire deal that's aiming to mediate the conflict between Israel and Lebanon. And this represents a massive high-level international effort to basically put a pause on the hostilities. But the reality on the ground, it's telling us a completely different story. Hezbollah explicitly rejected this U.S. plan, and at the exact same time, Israel continued its attacks. So we basically have diplomats drawing lines on paper in these quiet negotiation rooms, while the sheer physical reality of the conflict continues unabated on the front lines. It's really that classic tragic disconnect between international mediation and frontline action. Moving on to Section 2. Questions from the front lines. The unknowns defining the conflict. Now, the first major unknown that is really anchoring the geopolitical narrative right now is this. What exactly is Lebanon's Beaufort Castle? And look, this isn't just some historical curiosity for tourists. It's actually a massive strategic asset. Beaufort Castle is this historic fortress perched way up high in southern Lebanon, and it offers a commanding vantage point over all the surrounding terrain, and that includes northern Israel. If you look back through history, whoever holds this high ground gains a really significant tactical advantage. So seeing its sudden reemergence in the headlines, that tells us both sides clearly recognize its enduring military value, literally turning a 12th century relic right back into a modern frontline objective. And that leads us directly to our second big question. Why is Israel attacking Nabatea? Deciphering the why here really reveals the broader military strategy at play. Nabatea isn't just another small town. It's actually a major commercial and administrative hub in southern Lebanon. And the reporting indicates that targeting this specific area is a heavily calculated move to disrupt critical infrastructure and the logistical networks that Hezbollah relies on. It really signals a shift, right? Moving away from striking just isolated outposts and instead targeting the deeper structural command centers that sustain operational momentum. And then we arrive at the big overarching question. Has Hezbollah actually been weakened? This requires us to take a step back from the specific castles and towns to evaluate the broader balance of power. After sustained engagements and targeted strikes on their leadership and infrastructure, analysts are poring over the data to assess Hezbollah's current operational capacity. While it's clear they have sustained visible losses, the source reporting is asking a really critical question. Does their core command structure remain resilient? Or have these continued strikes significantly degraded their ability to launch coordinated retaliatory campaigns moving forward? Section 3. Global political tensions. We're doing a speed round here. Kenya, Colombia, and the UK. Let's jump over to Africa first, where we see the Kenyan president having to publicly defend a U.S. Ebola facility. And the crazy part is, this is occurring amidst deadly protests, which really highlights a severe collision between international public health infrastructure and domestic civil unrest. Next up, we cross over to South America. The headline there zeroes in on heavy United States investment in Colombia's election. It really exposes the intense international financial undercurrents flowing through local democratic processes. And finally, over in Europe, the United Kingdom is embroiled in a massively heated, highly publicized debate over two-tier policing. So think about that. 3 entirely different nations dealing with 3 entirely distinct political crises, boiling over on the exact same day. It's a pretty stark reminder of how deeply interconnected global financial, social, and democratic stability really is. Section 4. Tragedies and triumphs. Human impact and milestones. Over in Frankfurt, there was a seriously startling aviation accident. Lufthansa employees were reported injured after a Boeing 787 suddenly collapsed right there on the tarmac. It is a sudden, shocking injection of human vulnerability straight into our daily, heavy industrial infrastructure. Behind all the massive corporate logos and the routine global logistics, the physical risks to the real people working on the ground remain ever present. 6. That is the number of days a Sherpa was missing on the brutal, completely unforgiving slopes of Mount Everest before miraculously being found alive. I mean, wow. In a news cycle that is just so heavily dominated by conflict, political gridlock, and systemic failures, this really stands out. It's a profound, gravity-defying moment of personal endurance and absolute sheer survival against the odds. But you know the news swings incredibly quickly, from miraculous survival to sudden loss. 56. This marks the age of Marjane Satrapi when she passed away, as reported on this day. As the highly acclaimed author of the graphic novel Persepolis, her death at just 56 represents a massive cultural milestone and an incredibly heavy loss to the literary and artistic world. It is a quiet, deeply reflective moment amidst the loud, chaotic drumbeat of the day's other headlines. Which brings us to a final question that I really want to leave you with today. Amidst fractured diplomacy in the Middle East, unpredictable global protests, absolutely incredible stories of survival, and tragic cultural losses, what truly defines the reality of our world today? Is it the treaties that we try to sign in closed rooms, or the hard realities unfolding on the ground? The events of June 4th, 2026 show us that it's actually a deeply fragile, incredibly dynamic mix of both. I really hope this explainer helped you map out the complexities of this specific moment in time, and I hope it leaves you hungry to look closer at the headlines shaping our world. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep questioning the narrative.